Everybody's favorite part of the day, we finally have some new election poll numbers, and there's a lot. There's a lot of new numbers. There's a lot of new numbers that are floating around, so I want to start off really quickly with Through 38 Canada, who has updated their federal model, and according to their latest polls, the Conservatives are expected to win 192 seats, the Liberals are expected to win 101, Bloc at 37, and the NDP, and this is the big one, is going to lose party status and basically get wiped off pretty much across the map, which is pretty shocking. And so we're going to delve a bit deeper into those numbers. First, I want to show you guys this. This is Polywave. And Polywave is slightly different by one seat because they actually have the NDP at 12. Now, just keep in mind that 12 is the magic number to retain party status. So if they get anything below 12, the NDP officially loses their official party status, which would be detrimental to the party and their reconstruction. Because at the end of the day, Jagmeet Singh is most likely going to lose his seat, and they're going to have to get a new leader. They're going to have to do a leadership race. If they are reduced to less than 12 seats, it's going to be very difficult for them to rebuild and to try to get in contention again. Now, again, the Liberals are at 101. The Conservatives are at 192. So, very similar numbers to Through 38 Canada, but I want to delve a bit deeper into these numbers. So if we take a look right here at these federal poll numbers, if we open them up, take a look right here. So the Conservatives actually did go down in terms of their seat count. So they're now at 192, and the Liberals have gone up to 101. So they've surged up. The Bloc has gone down. The NDP has gone down. But this is the biggest one. This is the biggest one. So Through 38 Canada has the odds of winning the most seats, and for the first time in, I want to say 3 years almost, the Liberals are, I don't want to say back in contention because it's still a 1% chance, but the Liberals are entering the realm of contention for winning the most seats. So they're now at a 1% chance. I know, doesn't seem like much, but take a look at this. Odds of outcome. It's now only a 3 out of 4 chance that the Conservatives win a majority. There's very well a real possibility that the Conservatives end up winning a minority, and the Liberals can win a minority as well. We're going to talk about that in a second, because I think there's many different numbers that are floating around, but we need to try to talk about which ones are accurate. How do we determine that? It's very complex, but we're going to try to do our best job here at the channel. Now take a look at this. Official opposition odds. Again, for the first time in I don't know how many years, the Conservative Party has gone up for the odds for official opposition. mind you, though, it is 1%. But still, again, the Liberals have gone down. It was 99+%, but now it's down to 99%. But take a look at this. Coalitions. And this is a big one. What would happen is, if they do a coalition, the Liberals and the Bloc, they get pretty close to this 172 mark. So we were talking about this a few months ago with the Liberals potentially merging with the NDP and even the Bloc, but more so like a unite the left kind of thing. And there was a possibility that they would end up limiting the Conservatives as majority. But this, obviously it doesn't limit their majority, but it still does limit their influence if they were to do this. But I don't think they will. But nonetheless, it's interesting to talk about it. And then again, odds of reaching 172 seats, 74% chance for the Conservatives. So look at that. Now this is the big one, popular vote. So the popular vote in Canada, similar to, you could say the United States, it's not really relevant in most cases. And I'm talking about just electorally from a complete, if you're looking at just from the map perspective, because at the end of the day, the Conservatives did win the popular vote in 2021 and 2019. So it didn't really matter that much that they won it because they did end up losing the election. But nonetheless, the popular vote does tell us quite a bit about how the overall mood is in the country. And so when Trudeau resigned, this was on the 6th. Well, this is the day before. But nonetheless, when Trudeau resigned, it was 45-20. Okay? It's now 42-29. It's now a 13-point gap, which is quite different from what it was before. And look at the NDP. The NDP was literally almost tied with the Liberals for the amount of support. They were at 19, Liberals are at 20. They're now at 15. So things change quite quickly, and things are changing even quicker than we ever could have expected. Because if we take a look right here, and this is the number I really like to talk about, the seat projection count from Through 38 Canada. Through 38 Canada had the seat projection. They've done this for a while now, and so when you take a look at the seat count projection, the highest that the Conservatives were at was 238. Okay? It was 238 to 41. the Liberals were expected to be the third party, which is crazy to think about because now it's become 192 to 101. So the gap before was about, I don't know, almost 200. I mean, almost 200, which is insane to think about. And now it's only 91. So they've cut the lead by more than half, essentially. And they're only continuing to surge. Now, there's a lot of questions still unanswered because this does not take into account the fact that Mark Carney is going to be the likely Liberal leader. I do think, though, that it's worth noting that this overall trend has just gone quicker and quicker ever since Justin Trudeau resigned. So take a look right here. Last week, we were at 84 for the Liberals, and it was 205 for the Conservatives. This week, it went up to 101, so they went up by 17. The Conservatives went down by 13. And so the pace has just been picking up. Look at this 3 weeks ago. Actually, 4 weeks ago. 44 seats for the Liberals. They basically gained 70 seats in 3 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks. That is pretty shocking. That is pretty shocking. Now, this is not the end of our numbers because we have some brand new numbers. Which one is it? Yeah, take a look right here. So this is one that I want to talk about, and this is one that all conservatives especially should be paying attention to. New Leisure poll. This is if Mark Carney were Liberal leader. This is by Real Albanian Pat again, who's reporting this. This is not conducted by him. Obviously, this is conducted by Leisure. But 40% would go for Conservatives. 39% would go for Liberals. 39%. Take that in. Because what that means is if you take a look right here, opinion polling. Take a look right here. This is what I want to refer to because this is kind of huge and it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Yeah. So the Liberals in many polls were actually much lower than this, 39 to 40 range. I mean, they weren't even close to it. Now, in fairness, they were winning in some polls. They were losing in some polls too. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is, or the point that I'm trying to convey here, is that this number right here, this number, this 39, is because of the NDP. The NDP is at 9%. Do you know what that means? That basically translates to this. This is what it translates to. 0 seats for the NDP. But that's not even the biggest deal. Because the biggest thing here is that if this Leisure poll were true, now, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't true, I'm not saying it is true. I'm just saying it's a poll. You take every poll with a grain of salt. That's how I think of it. That's how most people should think of it. But look at this poll. If Mark Carney were the leader, the Liberals would win 185 seats. 2015, you know how much Trudeau won? Take a look. We're going to pull it up right here. He won 184. So if this were to happen, they would win more seats than Trudeau won in 2015. That is crazy. That is truly crazy. And the Conservatives, they only won 99, so they didn't do too good that election. But nonetheless, I mean, we were talking about, I think there was one poll I showed you guys that would translate to 271 seats for the Conservatives at one point. This is about a few months ago. We're going from 271 seats to 139. I really don't know how to describe that. And I also want to point out that some people were saying that Liberals could lose party status. I mean, that's shocking. But the biggest loser in all of this, the person that loses the most, is the NDP. 0 seats. 0. I mean, you could take a look at the map. They usually win in like Vancouver. They win one in Edmonton. They win the Edmonton riding. But 0. That is shocking. That is really, really shocking. And I do think it's worth noting the Bloc also suffers quite a bit. The Bloc suffers quite a bit. They only end up winning 17 according to this new poll. Now, obviously, one poll does not tell us everything, because I do want to show you guys another poll really quickly. This is a new Leisure poll. This is assuming, or I should say, removing the assumption that Mark Carney is leader. So what does that mean? Well, it's just talking about the Liberal Party as a whole. So this would actually show you, I would say, a more pragmatic result and a more realistic one, in the sense that it's 41 to 33. I think, look, I think it would be unfair to say that the Liberals are below 30 points. I don't think that's really the case. But I also think it would be unfair to say that the Conservatives are definitively below 40 points. I think in most polls they should be above 40 points still, because I think this gap, this 8-point gap, is pretty accurate for the most part. 8 points is still a reasonable lead, and it does translate to victory, because if you take a look right here, the latest Leisure poll, this is the one that is assuming, or I should say, removing the assumption that Mark Carney is leader. This poll shows the Conservatives at 164 seats, which would end up giving them a minority, but nonetheless, we'll talk about that in a second. The Liberals would be 149, so again, this is still a big number. I mean, this 149 is a big number. And the biggest thing to consider here is, if ever, and this is one big if, I don't think it'll happen just because Mark Carney is not from Quebec. And by the way, this is just me saying that I assume that Mark Carney is the leader. But there is a possibility that the Liberals and Bloc Québécois do end up merging, end up forming a coalition, which would give them a majority. Now, in fairness, I don't think that's really going to happen, because the Bloc Québécois is not really on board for Canadian interests and the whole, dealing with Trump and the tariffs. I don't think the Bloc would really do that, number one. Number two, it would be hard for Carney to convince the Bloc, especially since he's not a francophone and his French is not that advanced. And then number three, I also think it's highly unlikely, because the Bloc sort of wants to hold on to their own identity. I think if there's any party that's least likely to form a coalition, it would probably be the Bloc. They're very stuck on their whole Quebec first movement. So they're not really Canada first, they're Quebec first. But I still think it's worth noting. I mean, this is still a minority, man. This is still a minority. Now, if we take a look right here, I want to do a simulation really quickly for 338 Canada. So 338 Canada, I think, if we're basing it on this Leisure poll, which shows technically you can't go above 31.8. So I'm just going to put them at 30. Yeah, I guess I'll put them there. And then I'll put the Conservatives at 41. And yeah, so if we take a look right here, yeah, the NDP would be at 11. So the NDP would lose quite a bit of support. We'll put them as low as we can, because we can't put them any lower because it just doesn't let me. But let's do a seat projection right here. Yeah, so Conservatives win a majority. Still, I do think it's worth noting that this would still, go to a bit to the right. This would still go a bit to the left, which would end up swinging a bit. But the Conservatives still do hold on. They still do hold on. But look at this, the NDP, 2 seats. That is pretty shocking. I mean, 2 seats is, it's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. And I do think that, if they were to win 2 seats, I think it's pretty obvious. First of all, Jagmeet Singh would most likely lose his riding. And second, he would most likely not be the leader of the NDP any longer. Because I think it's hard to have someone as leader, especially when they don't win their own seat. But if history has shown us something, there are strange things that happen. So I wouldn't count I wouldn't count it out. I think there's definitely a possibility. I want to talk about Ontario. So Ontario, Doug Ford, not looking too good for him in the new polls. So Doug Ford is an interesting case. I think Doug Ford is one of those guys. He had a very good lead going into this. He had a very strong lead, actually. It was like 100 seats plus. And I must admit, I was sort of blinded by these numbers, because I did assume that would automatically mean that he would win. Now, in fairness, I do think he's still going to win based on these numbers. But the margin of victory that I was expecting is probably not going to happen, because if you take a look right here, he is projected to win 86 seats. Now, I say only 86 seats just because about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, he was at 100 plus. Now, I do want to talk about this really quickly. He is still projected to win the most seats, 99%, blah, blah, blah. Popular vote is still working out pretty well for him. But this is the biggest one. I mean, I don't know why he went down by so much. If there's anybody who knows or who has a theory as to why he went down by so much, please let me know. Is it the debate? I did watch the debate, or the debates, I should say. I watched a part of the Northern Ontario one, but then I watched the one that happened recently with all 4 candidates, sort of like a weird formation. It wasn't really a debate. It was kind of like a discussion, I would say, in some respects. But nonetheless, I mean, he was trending towards the 100 plus, range about 2 weeks ago or so. And he's lost that lead. Now, he has gone up by 1 seat, in 1 day, I guess. But still, I think it's worth noting that the NDP and the Liberals are really fighting for who's going to be third and second. Sorry, I should say second, because that's probably the bigger one, the official opposition. As it stands right now, and this is kind of shocking because the NDP was winning for quite a bit, or at least was beating the Liberals. For the first time in a pretty long time, the Liberals are actually projected to become the official opposition, which is shocking. And then again, odds of winning the most seats, still a 99% chance. I think, it would be irrational to say that the PCs are not going to win a majority. Nonetheless, I think it is still worth pointing out that he has lost quite a bit of support. I mean, going from 96 in one day to 85 is not a good thing. Not a great thing, especially when the election's literally 8 days, in 8 days. It's on the 27th. By the way, if you're from Ontario, make sure to vote. Or if you're not registered to vote, make sure to register to vote because it's a huge election. This is a huge, huge election. Now, one last thing I want to talk about. And I know everybody loves talking about this. Gotta end, not this one. Gotta end off with this. Burnaby Central. Oh, never mind. Burnaby Central. Let's end off with it. And yeah, man, Jagmeet Singh not looking too good for him. Now, I do want to note, this is one thing that I did mention, and I did make this prediction. I know, shocker, another prediction from me. I do make a lot of predictions, by the way, for those that don't know. But this is something that I actually did not know would happen this quickly. I said that the Liberals were sort of a dark horse in this riding, and it would appear that they actually are. Because as of recently, they have pretty much tied with the NDP, or they are tied with the NDP in terms of the vote count in Burnaby, and they are also tied with the NDP for the odds of winning that seat. And what does that mean? If they go up, that means that the NDP goes down, obviously, but it also means that the Conservatives have gone down too. So the Liberals in this riding have chipped away, obviously, at NDP support, but they've also chipped away at Conservative support. I think the Conservatives were at like 40-something at one point. I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. But take a look right here. This is the popular vote projection in this riding. Look at this huge switch up. This is huge. Like, this is crazy if you actually think about it. On the day that Trudeau resigned, or the day before he resigned, it was 38 to 36 to 20. Okay? Keep that number in mind. The Liberals were at 20. The Conservatives were at 36. The NDP was at 38. Today, the NDP is at 30, so they've gone down by about 8. The Conservatives have gone down by about 2. And the Liberals have gone up by 10. Yeah, so that essentially means, obviously they chipped away mostly at NDP support, but now they're chipping away at Conservative support. What does that mean? Well, if I'm going to be honest with you, it's very simple. If I'm the Conservatives, I'm running a very strong candidate in that riding because you need to win that riding if you are a Conservative. You kind of need to. It's a huge riding. It's basically one of your biggest opponents' riding, number one. But also number two, it's in BC. You want to get some ground in BC. You want to gain some ground in BC because I think that's one area that I wouldn't say the Conservatives have struggled, but I think they can definitely do better in. And if they end up chipping away in BC, that'll be huge for them. Now, again, I do want to note the odds of winning has changed quite a bit in this riding. It was fluctuating a lot between the NDP and the Conservatives right here, as you can see. And for the first time, I mean, the Liberals are at 1% chance, less than 1% chance of winning. For the first time since, obviously, keeping aside last week, for the first time in a very long time, they're now at a 20% chance of winning the seat. I don't know if they've ever been that high in the history of this riding, but nonetheless, still a dark horse. Now, I do want to note they are still lower than what they were at in 2021, but it is quite an improvement from where they were at in 2019, and obviously, it is a big improvement from where they were in this election, in this election cycle before Trudeau resigned. And then for the Conservatives, obviously a huge increase. I mean, that's still 12 points they're gaining right there. And I do think it's worth noting that the Conservatives are most likely going to win this riding. But if I am whoever decides for the candidates, I mean, I don't really know if they've chosen their candidate yet or not. I could probably look that up and talk about another video. But whoever the candidate is there needs to be very, very strong. Because if you win that riding, you can easily turn the tide in BC, and you can easily change the conversation there. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I do think this is a very interesting point of discussion. Not just Jagmeet Singh's riding, but also some of these other polls that came out, like this one, for example. And this one, these new maps that have been shown by Real Opinion Pat, he's done a great job doing that. Obviously, based on the polls from Leisure. Let me know what you guys think, because I think, and I want to have a civil discourse, because I see all the time in the comment section, people get angry, and another angry person responds from either side, and then they get mad, and they just go back and forth. So let's talk about our ideas. Let's talk about what, this is a big question that I'm going to leave to you guys. I'm going to leave to you guys, sorry, I should say. What should each party, and I'm referring to the Conservatives, NDP, Liberal, and, even the Green to a lesser extent, and the Bloc, what should they do? What should each party do to try to recoup some of the support they lost, or in the case of the Conservative, or in the case of the Liberals, what should they do to try to gain support and continue to gain support? So, for example, the Liberals have been going up, the Conservatives have been going down. So what do they do to reverse this pattern? Both parties, what do they do to reverse this pattern? That's the big question. And that's what I want you guys to talk about in the comment section, because I'm actually curious what you guys think. I do think that, the Conservatives and the Bloc need to start focusing on their messaging. Their messaging is clearly falling on deaf ears in many respects. And so it's really reflecting in the numbers and in these polls. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see y'all in